All right, everybody. Hello, good morning, and good afternoon to everybody else who's on the East Coast. Thank you again for joining us for our panel. We're going to go ahead and give everybody a couple minutes just to sign in here. Again, thank you all for joining us, and we will get started in just a couple minutes. All right, as everybody's coming in, we do have some polls for you to interact with while we're waiting. Go ahead and check those out. We will be reading some of the polls throughout the panel today. So go ahead and check those out, and we'll be reading those very soon.
So professional, Lisa and Abby. Polls, everything. Got it all going.
Thank you. Hey, Jared, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, so we do have attendees muted for now. We're just going to keep it on the panelists, but we do have the the Q&A section. So go ahead and drop your questions there, and we will be answering questions throughout or actually, we'll wait till the end to answer the questions, but go ahead and drop them in whenever you're ready. Okay, we'll give it one more minute for people to come in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. This is your last chance to pour your cup of coffee before we get started. So go ahead and do that. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. So again, good morning, good afternoon to everybody on the East Coast. Thank you so much for joining us for the AI at Crossroads Creativity, Compliance, and Business Affairs. If that's what you were looking for, you've made it to the right place. My name is Lisa Doherty, and I'm a Business Affairs Manager at my 9 to 5, but today I'll be your producer. Before we get started, just a couple of quick notes. Again, this session will be recorded, and we will be sending out a recording link in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that. Again, we will have polls. Go ahead and check those out and fill them out whenever you would like to do so. We will be reading some of the answers throughout the session to get a better idea of how you all are feeling about AI. And this morning, it seems like we are feeling excited about AI. 38% of us are excited. Again, keep interacting with those polls so we can see how you guys are feeling and where we're at with AI today. Again, questions, Q&A feature. We'll answer some questions at the end. And again, AI is a topic that everyone is trying to get a handle on, and this panel brings together industry thought leaders across business affairs, creative, and production to help us navigate this new territory. With that, I'm so excited to introduce our host, Abbi Press. Abbi and I met over a decade ago at our first advertising job in business affairs. We worked with the legend, Kathy Brooks. So just wanted to give her a shout out because she was such a great mentor to us. To know Abbi is to know that she's always been an early adopter. She's always tinkering with up and coming tools and platforms, especially in her music. It's been such an honor to reconnect with her the last few weeks to discuss AI and to bring this panel together for you today. So let's go ahead and kick things off. Introduce our panelists. Abbi, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, I'm Abbi Press. I'm the Global Lead Business Affairs Manager at Uber, and I'm thrilled to be hosting this conversation today. For the last 15 years, the perspective I've brought to my work has always been shaped by both the business side and the creative side, because I'm also a lifelong musician and performer. I recently decided to call this my Double Helix, the constant interplay between creativity and compliance. For years, this duality has been a useful lens, but in the age of AI, I've realized it's no longer just useful, it's essential. Because in this new landscape, decision making requires imagination. Creativity demands ethical responsibility, and neither works without the other. They're two strands of the same thread, and AI is pushing them to their absolute limit. AI has created an inflection point for all of us. The pressure to move fast has never been greater, but so is the need to build trust. In just 6 months, we've all watched AI reshape how we brainstorm, how we produce, even how we perform creative work. And it's breathtaking, but what hasn't kept pace are the rules, the rights, and the roles. We're not just adopting new tools, we're being asked to imagine the very frameworks that govern creativity itself. So a couple months ago, I started asking some hard questions, like what does it mean for our industry if AI can do in minutes what used to take weeks? And if AI is rewriting the creative process where briefs become prompts, agencies evolve into algorithms, and marketers become curators, and what role should all of us play in leading through it? The response has been overwhelming, and the message is clear. We need more spaces like this, spaces where the promise of AI meets the realities of compliance, where ethics are not an afterthought, where we can protect the integrity of our ideas while still unlocking new frontiers. That's what today is about. And it's why I believe business affairs has never been more essential. We're the connective tissue between creativity and compliance. Our mission has always been to translate big ideas into reality. And today, the big idea is helping define the future of AI itself. That is where the future will be negotiated. And I'm grateful to all of you for being part of this discussion. So before we dive into questions, let's start off with some quick intros. Dustin, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Dustin, and I'm the president at Tool. I'm based in Los Angeles. We have offices in Belgium and France as well. Just a little history. We started as a traditional commercial production company. So we have worked with many agencies, many brands over our 30 years of existence. And in 2009, we kind of had an inflection point when I came on board, which my background is more in digital and technology and digital creative. And we founded at the time, we called it our digital arm, which now has evolved into experience. And really what we wanted to do was kind of be at the intersection of content creation for advertising and branding with technology. And we've done that ever since. And starting in 2016, we started to integrate AI. At the time, it was more predictive AI. There was no Gen AI. We were doing things with Toyota and New Balance and brands like that. In fact, I think we integrated Abby, even Uber into a project with the Grammys that was using like computer vision and things like that back in 2018 or something. And then when generative AI came out in the summer of 2022, this was like a huge opportunity for us. It was like the holy grail of like, yes, like content creation and technology and storytelling and all these things are coming together. So anyway, we've been very excited and been very experimental and at the forefront of trying all this. And so our company has been, we have directors on our roster, we have internal creatives and we have developers. So we're also at this interesting intersection of you've got directors who are used to shooting, live action content in a certain way. Some of them are not comfortable with AI. Some of them are very excited. So anyway, I'm excited to talk about it and glad you all, put this together. And obviously I've got a lot of interesting stories to share of how we've navigated that over the years with different clients.
Thanks. Anastasia, do you want to go?
Sure. Hi, I'm Anastasia. I'm an associate creative director or director at Amazon. I currently work at the Brand Innovations Lab, focusing on Prime Video sponsorship. So working with brands that want to create co-branded, integrated campaigns with Prime Video properties across the Amazon canvas. So it's been a really interesting place to continue to grow creatively. I come originally from the agency world, working in agencies in New York and LA, made the transition, spent some time in production companies and then in-house at various CPG brands and tech brands. And I'm also very excited about AI. I use it obviously as it's been unfolding and developing in tools daily. It's literally impossible to keep up, but I have just seen such an exponential growth in creativity and productivity that I am like championing it any opportunity I can. And I'm very excited to be on the panel today to talk about it. And Scott.
Yes, I'm Scott Terry, the Director of Business Affairs and Talent I'll try to say it with the Swedish pronunciation, Forsman and Bodenfors. Our office is in New York. I'm based out of Chicago. I've been basically following the Gen AI explosion for the past few years in terms of the business affairs and legal front. But also recently I've been experimenting with Gen AI myself to see what programs and content it can create. And then, looking at the looking at it from a creative side, but also from a business affairs side. So I'm excited. Thanks everyone for coming.
Amazing. I love all of the backgrounds that you guys are bringing to this. I think this is going to be a great conversation. So I'm going to start off with question number one. According to a 2025 report, half of advertisers are already using Gen AI to build video ads. How are you and your teams currently leveraging AI to scale creative production or streamline workflows? What tools specifically are you using? Because I'd love to share some resources with everybody.
I mean, I can kick it off because we do a lot of video production, using AI. Um, I would say, well, that's a big question. There's a lot of models that we use. Here's the thing is that there's open source models and there's closed source models. And there's also the idea of, are you generating 100% AI videos, or is it a hybrid AI video production, meaning you're shooting live action or you're using CG and then combining it with AI generated content? And all of that is happening. And as far as the tools that we're using, I would say that Google Veo is probably the video generation tool that we use the most, and but we use Runway Gen 4. We use Kling. Sure a lot of you people in the BA world have heard of Mary, which has recently come out from Moon Valley and Asteria. Mary's big claim to fame is that they are looking to be a video generation model specifically for professional filmmakers, and it's all based on clean data. So I think the issue that all of us have is, what is VO trained on? Mary is saying we have trained on clean data, and that is 100% what we are. So you don't have any concerns about some of the ownership and copyright issues and things like that. And then also One is the other video generation tool that we use a lot of, which is an open source. So some of what I just mentioned are open source. Some of them are a combination of closed source, and that's kind of what these are. Now, there's different intricacies and pros and cons to each one, but I'm just sharing that's high level, some of the video generation. Then there's other things that we use for like image upscaling to get it to the level of quality or visual resolution. You might use Topaz or Magnifique. Then we're using voice generation like 11 Labs and Flawless and things like that. And I guess just we'll get into it later, but the thing I would just say is, what I have found what can get a little complicated from a BA standpoint is the terms and conditions for each of these different platforms is different. And that is something that we're starting to see. We're getting a lot more extensive conversations with the legal teams and the production teams at our clients on that kind of thing. What is really allowed and what isn't, and that gets into, is it open source or is there an enterprise level? So anyway, I'll stop there for a moment, but and open it up to everybody else.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think it's really interesting because from my perspective, I'm really using AI as a creative amplifier rather than automation. For my position in terms of prototyping, concepting, helping to develop ideas. But I'm still not really of the mind of using AI in final work. And I totally respect Dustin's position in terms of like what you guys are, and that the tool is out there. But from a creative perspective, if I'm working on creating a campaign, it's still to shoot it practically, if possible, as much as possible. And so the majority of the tools I'm using are predominantly for creative development, prototyping, concept development, presenting, and then in the post-production process. But sort of in the middle, we're still trying to push as much as we can into using human talent. So, I will use pretty much all of the tools that are available to me. So I think chat is still my probably most heavily used in terms of deep research. Like when you think about getting an RFP or a brief from a client, oftentimes there isn't enough information to really get a juicy idea from it. So I'm using it as a strategist and doing a deep dive into, what this demographics, like what their behaviors are, what other brands are doing in the competitive market. And then obviously as a creative partner, whether it's concepting itself, the writing, or end up, prototyping what the final output could be. And then lastly, I often use it as a junior team. I need variations, I need copy lines, I need resizing. And so I'm using all of the different tools. So like I said, Chat, Gemini, Midjourney, and I think the Adobe integrations are now like basically second nature. I don't even know how we did comping before that. Like, honestly, it's insane. So, and even like a couple weeks ago, the new Harmonize tool that Photoshop launched, I mean, it's out of this world where, the amount of time and effort that is now expedited in my creative output. But again, for me, it is much more predominantly in the creative development and prototyping phase rather than actually going to make something final, which I'm still, there's a time and place for it. And I think I'll get into that later, but it's really more in terms of like creative development.
Hey, Anastasia, I totally agree. Like we're kind of more on your side in terms of the front end, the research strategy, uh, doing presentations for clients, etc. But things change quickly. But it also depends on what the clients are comfortable with. Some are more into Gen AI than others. Some aren't. So it's all just going to depend on like case by case as we go. And then, of course, balancing the risks, like Dustin was saying, in terms of, Adobe, Getty, Shutterstock, all, train on their own data. So they have a lot more indemnifications and protections, but also the quality of the output I don't think is as great as some of the others, also because they're only training on their own material. So it's going to be interesting to see where it all shakes out.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, what you said, Anastasia, like using it as a collaborator. And I think that's such an important part of the conversation because right now in the US, things that are purely AI generated aren't protected by copyright. And it's a really gray area. But basically there has to be some level of human involvement in the creation to make it copyrightable. And I think that's just another kind of doubling back to how humanity needs to still play a part. And then what Dustin, you said about all of the tools, like there's so many different tools popping up every single week. And I think that what I've seen is there's a big conversation about like where is our data going and is there a longevity to this tool? We can't chase after every single tool that comes out, but how do we continue to play like internally with our creatives to make sure that we're getting the front line, new products that are coming out. And it's interesting working at an enterprise that, we have the enterprise version of Gemini or ChatGPT. And then, there's these other platforms that are coming out that offer indemnification, the protection, if something is generated that isn't licensed, then they'll protect you. But like Free Pick, they'll offer all of the different tools that you could imagine, and then you just use it through their platform and toggle things off and on and give credits to other people. So there's all these different tools coming out, and it's definitely interesting to see the landscape evolve and just everyone trying to chase after it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the big thing that I've just seen over the years is that unfortunately, marketing budgets are staying the same or in many cases getting smaller. Production costs are rising, and we're all in the creative business. And I think we want to make amazing creative that delivers on business results, obviously, for our clients. And this is me subjectively. I feel like creativity hasn't been great over the past few years. I can't think of too many things that are like the standout like campaigns that have come out. You're like, oh my gosh, this was amazing. And I feel like it's because we're so stuck in the muck of like versioning and figuring out things for budgets and all this. And this is why Tool has been a big proponent of Gen AI is a way for us to deliver alternative creative solutions. And I look at it as to be able to deliver better creative, bigger scale productions, things that are at a higher production value than we could have done a year ago, 2 years ago. And that's where we're starting to see both our directors internally are starting to go, oh my gosh, you're telling me now, instead of me having to go shoot, we'll go shoot real talent. I think all of us that is the sticking point. Like if we can, that's the preference. Go shoot real talent. But if now I can go shoot my talent in this one room, like the one I'm in, and now I can use AI to completely change out the room so that it looks like I'm in a completely different room and even change out the clothing that I'm wearing. That is a huge, huge benefit that is going to allow us to scale the creative in a way that we couldn't have before and would have been way more expensive. So I think that's where we're seeing a lot of like immediate, opportunities. That's just from like a production design, and opportunity. But I don't know. We're starting to see a huge transition where a lot of clients are now. I'm sure all of you are sick of hearing this, but the CEO or whomever saying, "Just use AI," and everybody's like, "Well, how do you want to use AI?" There's so many different ways, like the ways Anastasia and Scott you were talking about it, and the way I'm talking about it. But I'm starting to see a lot of yeah, a decent amount are pushing us to say, hey, go talk to the guys at Tool or somewhere else because we want to start leveraging AI. Some cases just in small tests of like just have it change out the clothing, on someone or change out the background. And in some cases, people are going, hey, we're going to go all out and we're doing 100%, AI video. So anyway, I'm just sharing that I've seen a huge transition in the past, I would say, probably 4 months, of just a far heavier push to start using it and using it in a way that you're either going to get more production value or it's going to elevate your creative into a way that you can either scale it or personalize it, et cetera.
Yeah, and just to counter that, just because I totally agree, and I think there's a deep, deep interest also from a creative perspective. Like, where can we go with this? Like, I mean, what you're describing is like every creative's dream, where like you can give me my idea plus for a lower budget. Like, of course. I think for me, on my perspective, is that there's still a gap to some degree on what we lose in terms of reality and realism, and it's approaching. It's a curve that's approaching a place where. The common user won't know the difference, right? But there is this like subtle touch of humanity that I think at this point there's still a tension where I'm like, can we tell that this isn't real versus not? And I think as the gap gets smaller and smaller, then the adoption is going to become wider and wider because the common user won't know the difference. But at the same time, it's like there's still too wide of a gap in a lot of places where I would be hesitant to go that route. But I know, again, as the models are getting even faster and better, I mean, it'll be in what, 2 months, 3 months, maybe 6 months before we're going to be really like, okay, this is super real. And I'm not really concerned about it looking super fake. And it doesn't compromise what you're describing as like the human element, which is like the actual performance of the talent, what they're actually saying, their voice that they're, if we're talking about the color of the scene behind them or things like that, which I think it's a scale, right? There's like a scale of like what we'll tolerate as fake, right? As creatives and as viewers. And that scale is getting like, it's like,
One of the things that I'm thinking about for as far as business affairs is that, with a regular script or storyboard, we're looking at the beginning for any flags for issues. Now it's going to be more on the back end when we see what's actually output from the Gen AI to, look like Dustin was saying with the background behind him. Are there, branded things in the background or, just kind of looking more on the back end versus the front end, and then hopefully being able to make tweaks with the Gen AI. I'm also seeing I guess it's some glimmer of optimism in terms of the legal side, because every lawsuit I'm seeing is individuals or companies suing the actual Gen AI companies, and no one is going after clients or agencies. The only one I've seen was recently where a lawmaker went after the agency and client because it was an actual deep fake. But that's the only one I've seen so far. So um, that's good news on this front.
Yeah, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
go
go ahead.
go ahead, Abby.
I was just gonna say, I like what you said, Dustin, about like the creative is kind of suffering a little bit because we're always so constrained to our budgets and like all the different versioning and I work at a global brand, so I was thinking that kind of leads pretty well into like our next question where it's like sharing creative or the concrete AI use cases and how you measure their impact on efficiency, quality, or outcomes. So for me at Uber, one of our recent grocery delivery campaigns, we used AI generated imagery to supplement the product photography, like the food on a white background. And that let us maintain consistency across all of these markets without adding additional production days. Like originally, we had even considered flying around the globe to get all of the different types of food and packaging. But the result was awesome because our creative and production teams could focus on the important shots with real photography and talent, while those product images, they're like skews on that background. They were generated with AI, and that freed up everybody's time for what really matters, which is the storytelling. And I think what excites me even more is like how quickly AI is becoming a strategic tool, not just the production shortcut. Because like Anastasia said earlier, it helps us iterate ideas faster on briefs. Other times, maybe it's about that translation, which is adapting a concept from one market to another without diluting the message. And I think if it's integrated thoughtfully, it doesn't have to reduce friction only. It can actually open up creative options we haven't thought of before. So faster timelines, yes, but hopefully also better, bolder work or like scale without sacrifice. So I don't know, Anastasia, what kind of outcomes are you seeing from AI in your work? Are you seeing like anybody measuring time savings or budget impacts? Like, I think that the measurement part of it is something that's a lot of people are still trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, personally, as an art director, and on our team, we often don't have enough writers. And so I'm now using large language models, able to basically take on the role of a writer and entirely carry several campaigns without another person. So we're talking about the output of two people in one. But I think one very specific example was I worked on a flower delivery brand and created they have very little budgets for what they were creating and using a lot of imagery for their ads, creating like different iterations of it. And this is right when the generative fill tool was launched in Photoshop, and I created a concept using stock imagery. The concept being like, you're never alone with a mother's love, and so taking a stock photo of a woman and a child and removing the mother from the shot, and it's just a kid, and then laying it out into a timeline where we start with the child and the mom fades in. And we keep doing that over and over again. So it was like a really simple concept that didn't alter the humanity in the sense of like creating a person or altering their arms or their bodies, but creating like a visual language and a treatment in using existing imagery. And I mean, it was a third of the budget. It took 50% of the time. I mean, I think to Dustin's point, you cannot argue with the hard data in terms of the fact that it's faster, cheaper, and it looked amazing. I mean, it's sold in the room. I made a proof of concept rough cut in Premiere where there's a track, and I mean, there were tears and it was sold. Aside from the product end card, it was like, this is ready to go. So I think when you're seeing that, it's hard to argue that this is like an incredible tool that's increasing productivity, reducing costs, and increasing creativity. So
Yeah, and I can just say super high level that we've seen across a lot of different clients that we've worked with, like a 30 to 60% savings in either budget and or time. And I want to be clear, I think all of us are not looking to all of a sudden go from, let's just call it a modest to crappy budget that we're all seeing now to now, oh yeah, let's just cut that in half. I think the hope and for our industry is that we're seeing the same budget, but now it's like creativity and production plus. Now it's like, oh, to your point, Anastasia, now Anastasia, we can deliver on your creative concept that before would have cost us 2 times, 30% more, 60% more. Now we can do it with that same budget that you're giving us. I think that's my hope, for the industry. It doesn't become, oh, now we're even cutting back even more, and now we're going to do less and still ask for all these deliverables. I think that would be a bad place for our industry to be going.
I mean, I'm afraid it might go that way, but let's
Yeah,
try to keep the
yeah. But yeah, I mean, anyway, I know we got to jump into the others, but yeah, I could at some point I could share some examples of ways that we've done it with Land Rover and Starburst and Under Armour and others of how we've used AI, for actual, consumer facing campaigns.
Scott, do you have anything to add? Otherwise, we can jump into ethics.
Let's keep going.
All right. It looks like we had a poll question. Lisa, do you want me to share the outcome? Where's this?
I can go ahead and share. Love where this conversation is going and love that our panelists are sharing all the tools, all the AI tools that they're experimenting with. It looks like 56% of you are just getting started in exploring AI tools. It could be fun to share what tools you're using in the chat. We want to use this platform as an educational platform and a resource for everybody to kind of share what they're working with. Again, the panelists have done a great job of sharing their tools. Just curious what everybody else might be using in their day-to-day. And then before we get into ethics, we have our last poll, and we love for everybody to engage with it. What's your biggest concern with AI adoption? So I'll give it back to Abby to lead us into our ethics segment of the panel.
Awesome. So the question is, AI tools allow us to cut budgets and save time, which we were just talking about. But it also raises serious concerns from environmental impact to creative integrity. And in our field, specifically the business affairs side, is talent rights, IP concerns. With AI generating voices, faces, and likenesses, what does protecting human talent mean now? And what should it mean next? I think we've already seen real world cases like fake Drake, deep fake ads, even maybe Scarlett Johansson's voice being cloned without her consent. And the truth is, contracts haven't caught up. So, what does that mean if we're going to try and protect talent? Um, I'll just start. I say, like at Uber, I've been working really closely with my legal team to try and identify how we can update our contracts. And we've identified basically four pillars. The first is transparency. We need to clearly state how a likeness should be or will be used with AI. There's some new laws in California and New York that are kind of getting away with that whole all media in perpetuity language. And it's in the spirit of this new AI technology that's coming forward. Basically, we want to protect the idea, like with AI, you could use it for anything. And if the talent is signing up for one thing and they don't expect it to be used a different way, then that's not really acceptable anymore. So transparency is huge, consent, getting specific written permission for each use, and that would be written in your contract and with a signature. Compensation, talent should be fairly paid when their likeness is reproduced for AI. And, we've seen this with SAG-AFTRA, the union rules, but a lot of times, people are doing non-union work. And I think that everyone should think about updating that language to make sure that, humanity is still a part of our process. And then the last one is control. I think a lot of times you're probably going to see celebrities want that in their contracts, that they control what AI outputs, kind of in that same line of approvals. But that's definitely going to be a piece of it. So, I mean, as a creator and somebody who's negotiated with talent, I understand both sides of this push and pull. You're beholden to a budget, but then on the other side, you're like, I really hope they value me and what I've created. So we want to protect the people and not just the product. But Scott, I'd love to hear from you about what you've been working on in business affairs and what you're seeing with the talent world right now.
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, with the SAG after the new contract, they've put in some guardrails and rates and all that for using performers' images or creating Gen AI out of talent out of thin air. So they are thinking about it on that end. And so, yes, like you said, agencies that are non-union should definitely be thinking about that as well, so that they can still fairly compensate the performers for any future usage based off their likeness. I've been updating our purchase orders and production contracts, to say that if a vendor is going to use Gen AI in their work, that they at least need to like notify us so that we can talk about it and and figure out if we're all good to move forward with it. So yeah, it's those protections, and like Dustin said, it's a tool, right? So we're not trying to, I don't think, replace people, replace jobs. Still trying to hold on to those for talent, for people working at production companies, post houses, so that I mean, as we know, the budgets are getting smaller, tighter, but if we can keep going as a tool rather than replacement, I think that would be the best move moving forward.
Can I just add something to what you all are talking about? Like the thing that I keep trying to have conversations with the legal teams at some of our clients is let's use our common sense and experience that we all have in creative and production. And we've all been doing this for a long time. If you had shot a commercial and there was a Drake lookalike in that commercial and you tried to sell that commercial as if that's Drake, you would never do that because that is just that's just false advertising. The same way that I think that the worst of the worst, where people are using deep fakes and things like that without getting Drake's permission, these are bad actors who are just they should not be. We shouldn't. In my opinion, I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about people like the people on our call who we're going to do things responsibly. First and foremost, you have to get permission and have that transparency with your talent. And that is something we've all done for, even if you look at like how you negotiate with a composer, you negotiate with them, you get the rights for, creating the piece of music, and then you negotiate some kind of like rights to use it on an ongoing basis. I think it's somewhat similar in how we're trying to negotiate with talent, be it from music or real talent actors that you want to use in AI. And we've had success with this. So I think that this is something that, we all just need to use some of our production, know-how, and not, I find that people they hear AI and they immediately go to this like terrible space. And it's like, no, take a step back. There are so many things that it's very similar to. It is a new way. It's a new movement of how we can use it. But I hope that we just use common sense in all of this before we say no,
Yeah, I totally agree. We're a little bit in the Wild West period of this new tech, right? We're in the forefront, and everyone, and what I've come to see in the past when it was like, say, CG or social media, right? We're always pushing up against the boundaries of like what is acceptable, what is going to be the new standard when it comes to negotiating. And that's what you're describing. We're like, now there's going to be clauses where we're all going to build into these contracts that, we're not trying to replicate this person artificially. We want to pay them accurately for their time and their likeness, but also have the flexibility to use these tools with it. I think we are just in an adaptive period of understanding the capabilities of these super powerful tools that we're all beginning to use regularly, and how to safeguard the human talent that is the core of this industry, right? The faces, the voices, the musicians, the artists, like that's what makes advertising so memorable. It's the human quality of it. And so we shouldn't be afraid to engage with them, but they have to be protected in a safe way so that, like, again, like people get the compensation and protection that in any other way, like Dustin described, in any other media that would be used. So I think we'll get there.
Well,
Yeah, but I also think that we don't have to wait for and this is my opinion, some big, court case to tell us. Like, we all are experienced people. Just go do it. Like, don't be held back. Like, go do it. If you keep holding back and you're one of the companies, and I respect it if you are, if you're one of the companies, it's like, oh, we gotta wait. We have our AI task force and we have this. It's like, in my opinion, you're being left behind. Like, we are doing this with many different brands and many different agencies, and there are solutions to be had right now. And I do want to say one other thing. I'm not going to BS everybody and be like, oh yeah, there's no loss of jobs. There is a difference in our approach, meaning we can do so much more with a smaller team. So what does that mean? When we're going now, if you're reducing shoot days from, something that would have taken 3 days to 1 day, it's less crew. If you're working on certain types of visual effect shots and things, these are things that might have taken weeks before with a team of 20 people. And now it might take 3 people to do that, and you do it in a week. It's just a different way. You can also look at it and go, well, now we can produce way more creative and way more output. And so now teams of 3 people are now able to do so much more. And I just want to see that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that we're like, it's just smaller teams. Now, how that impacts the industry from a job perspective, I don't know. It just means that smaller teams can do so much more. And I think I look at it as exciting.
And Dustin, to your point, in terms of moving forward without knowing all of the lawsuits, settlements, and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to new tech, the legal is always 10 steps behind. I mean, we look at our lawmakers, and they were talking about social media, and many of them didn't even understand social media. So for them to wrap their heads around Gen AI, I mean, we're literally New York and New York and California have laws, but it's going to be piecemeal, like state by state by state. So it's not like the EU, where the EU actually just came out with like a comprehensive law. So it's going to take years for legal to actually catch up, especially in the US.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you said that, Dustin, because I don't want anyone to feel like we're like overly optimistic either. I think there's like realities to what's happening, and job loss is part of that. But my hope is that it's people will be put into new avenues and new opportunities will open up. And like you said, Dustin, with smaller teams, more is possible. Um, I think like a lot of this, why we wanted to bring all these different types of voices on this call was because I think a big piece of what business affairs has become is hopefully a change agent of like bringing possibility to what's creative. I think that's like the best of business affairs. When I started, I do remember there being a sort of feeling of like, oh, well, that's where like ideas go to die. Like, like to put it real bluntly, like it was like the Department of No. But I think that over time I have seen the shift. Like we have to be strategic. We have to think, like put our creative hats on and figure out how we can make this idea come to life. And I think early involvement changes everything. If we're looped in from the start, we can help design the systems that support creativity and create like the creative safety and freedom, like having our own little sandbox for our creatives to play in. And yeah, so I think it's really important that all of us keep a dialogue, whatever company that we're working with, to like between all the departments to make sure that we're all like feeling good about it. Because like you said, Scott, like the law is always going to be 10 steps behind. We're in a patchwork country where there's going to be laws in every different state. So it is a confusing time.
And
But
Abby and Scott, I will say that like you're our friends, in both in the creative community and the production community. Like we can't do anything without all of you, like you said, being strategic partners with us. In fact, our biggest successes have been when the production or creative departments at our clients have brought us in on conversations directly with their BA and legal teams up front to talk about like, hey, let's make sure we're on the same page and let's talk practically about how this stuff can be used. And I think the best legal departments we've worked with have actually they've understood, they've asked the right questions, and then they go, you know what, we can make this work, and that's where it's been, to your point, Abby, like a strategic partner. And now we're delivering on the creative and business and legal, outcomes that everybody's looking for at these clients, and that's been huge.
And Abby, to your point, I mean, yes, business affairs years ago had the reputation of being the Department of No, but I think we've definitely evolved, and it's like, okay, telling the creatives, it's a great idea. Not sure if we can do it that way, but what if we did it this way? And I did that within the last year with one of my creatives, and he said, "That's great. I love it. That works." So it's making sure we can still have the best creative moving forward, but also managing the risks at the same time.
yeah, and I think with AI, it's like it's evolving all of our roles, right? And I think for me, it's like I'm moving from managing risk to designing for the possibility. And I think compliance can be creative. It's kind of a dull word, but we can turn like the guardrails into launch pads for the ideas. And I think, um, you know, we're the connective tissue, like I said, and we don't want to just enforce rules. We want to turn the rules into fuel so that the ideas can happen. But Scott, maybe you can speak more into like the strategic advantage that we can create. Like, how do you think business affairs can define that advantage at the intersection of AI, creativity, and legal so that we turn compliance into a competitive advantage?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, because we know the law is going to always be behind and it's going to be patchwork. It's just, looking at the software being used, seeing if they have some indemnifications. If they don't, looking at, like I was saying, there's only been one case that I've seen where the agency and client have been sued directly. So then thinking about those outcomes. Maybe it's an indemnification with your clients if they're comfortable with that as well. So, trying to patch it together so that people feel comfortable, but we also make sure we get the best creative moving forward.
Awesome. Lisa, do you want to read the results of our last poll?
Sure do. Okay, so the last poll was, what was your biggest concern about AI adoption? And the number one selection from everybody was ethical risks, followed by lack of clarity around compliant tools. Yeah, again, this is a hot topic, big feelings around it, and I really love, the unified message from everybody, from the panelists, even to our audiences. Ethical AI use is up to each and every one of us using it. So again, I really appreciate the passion and the energy that everybody has around this, and again, the unified message and effort that we're all putting into these new tools that we are undoubtedly going to be using moving forward. So we are going to move into our last segment of the panel. So I do just want to remind everybody, go ahead and drop your questions into the Q&A feature. We'll answer as many of them as we can as we get to the end. And then Abbi, back to you for our final segment.
Cool. So yeah, this segment's all about like looking ahead. Where do we go from here? Like I mentioned, I think all of our roles have to evolve with AI. So the question is, how do you see your own role evolving with AI?
I can
Anybody?
start off. I think, I see the role of from the creative perspective evolving, from going to doing all the things yourself. So now we're writing, designer, refining, to really focusing on what is like worth doing. So it's like less about cranking out the work and more about the curation and making calls and stepping up the bar for what feels like original and human, and not just using this tool to just like continually spit out ideas. And I think, again, as I see AI as an amplifier to this whole process, it can speed up everything we do, but our responsibility is to guide it to where we want to use it and to keep the integrity of the work intact. So in a way, the role is like evolving from the creative output to really like creative stewardship is kind of how I'm seeing it, and making sure that ideas aren't just made faster, but they still stay really meaningful. And I think, as creatives, we do that whether the ideas come from ChatGPT or my own brain, right? I have to find those really human truths within it. And I think it's really this balance of dilution that we're seeing, right? Like if we're all relying on a machine to give me a human result, it does become diluted and becomes less and less human. And so my job is to continually find and push it and refine it and elevate it and dig it out, and not just become complacent on it and rely on it where it's just about volume or checking off boxes because it's really just using it to continue to push the creative forward. And so I'm excited about growing myself as a creative along with this tool. I think it's already even I think the last 6 months have really expanded it to such a way. So it's been really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in business affairs and talent, we still need to think about, the making sure we have the talent rights to replicate into Gen AI, that we've got our purchase orders and production contracts sorted, So still thinking about it from that end, but also I've been recently training myself on a lot of the Gen AI software, learning how to write prompts, refining. Dustin, I do like Google VO3. That's probably one of my favorite right now for video. So I want to also not just be a talent person, but also someone who can actually use Gen AI to create the content if need be.
And I would just add to all this, like my role has changed so much in that like we're getting involved obviously in coming up with creative production solutions. We're being advisors to creative teams at brands and agencies on how do you script and actually think about concepts with AI in mind. Um, we're working with legal teams, we're working to help serve as inspiration, to creative teams and production teams on how can you use AI. So it's a fun spot to be. It's a lot of work right now, to try to like get all of this communicated and sold in and get everybody thinking in the ways that we want to in order to be able to leverage AI in the way we are hoping they will. But I will say that I think we're seeing it evolve is that we're going to continue to use AI for campaign creative production. And to me, that's just a new way of doing campaign creative. The same way that when CG came out or when, other things came out, you used it. I think the other area, though, at least for Tool, that we're seeing as a big new different type of opportunity is what we're calling like AI content system design, meaning like we're actually creating like custom pipelines using AI to solve marketing content use cases. So photography, product photography, tabletop photography, creating certain types of social media content. You're now training AI on a specific style or product of your brand. And then you're using AI to then generate that. And this is more of the lower funnel content. And that's where we're seeing that a lot of clients are looking to Tool as like a software consultant, in many software and I should say production consultant. This is a new thing. This is not something that we did years ago, but it's an opportunity that we've seen over time. And that's been a big area that we've been growing in as well as doing all of the campaign, content production.
And to Dustin's point, I just want to double down on that. The idea, back when CG first came on I was shooting cars at the time, and it was this like tech panic that we're never going to shoot cars again. Everything's going to be CG. And there was like this, or like when the Red camera came out, they were like, oh my God, now we're going to take stills from video and we're never going to need a photographer on the set. And the reality is that those technologies have carved a space within certain use cases, just like AI will as well. Not every campaign is going to need AI. Not every campaign needs a CG component. However, with Dustin and all kinds of partners, we develop and realize where do we need that, or would be really helpful. It would be beneficial. So to us, it's about like carving a space out in this world where it's okay to use it. It has a place. It's not going to replace every single thing that we've ever created, and not be afraid of it, I think.
Yeah, I think that curiosity is going to be a big thing. Like we all work in an industry where we're constantly trying to push things forward, push the creative forward, come up with an idea that nobody's come up with before. So AI feels like a perfect fit for that. Obviously, there's so many things that need to be thought out. And as we're, building the plane while we're flying it, we all know that phrase and it feels very relevant. So I love that Scott, as a business affairs manager, you're playing with these tools and getting comfortable with the tech. And every time that I do that, I also feel much more secure with like the idea, like what I have to navigate in my day to day when AI comes up. I feel like more knowledgeable about talking about it. And it is just fun, like at first I was pretty skeptical about AI, and over time as I use the tool, I've just turned into a huge optimist about it because it's changed my workflow, I do think that it's going to be interesting to see because now we have an answer engine, right? It's not just like Google search. It's like, what's your question? Like I've already had people on my team like asking ChatGPT like business affairs questions. And so I think a lot of it's going to be about like education and like consulting an AI like counterpart. I think there's just so many different ways that this can go.
That's an interesting thing, Abby, about your teammates using like ChatGPT to ask business affairs questions, because I actually created a custom GPT in ChatGPT, uploaded a bunch of SAG documents, and then would ask it like a quick question, um, and then sometimes I would know that it was wrong, and so I would say like, "Are you sure?" And it would say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the correct answer." But the thing is, a younger person who doesn't know the SAG contract isn't going to know that that answer is wrong. And so they're not going to question it, and they're just going to take it, and they're going to have false information. So we still need, obviously, the experience behind the questions, even.
Yeah, and that's where mentorship I think is gonna play a huge role too. So I just want to create more spaces like this so we can all like share information and keep the education flowing. Um, Lisa, I think we're close to wrap, right?
Yeah, we've got about 3 minutes, so I feel like maybe we could do like one question from the group, and then I know we have a little bit of messaging before we close out. So thank you again, everybody, for asking your questions. There's a lot of questions around this topic, and we're hoping to host some more of these virtual panels moving forward, so stay tuned for that. But one question here, how will the creative dynamic between agency creatives and AI directors differ/evolve from working with live action directors? I think this is an interesting question because we're hearing a lot about not just directors having the mentality of like being able to prompt, but I'm just interested to see what the panel has to say about this because we all kind of have to be directors if we want to be good at prompts. So I'm just curious what the panel has to say for that question.
I mean, we represent both live action directors who have obviously always shot traditional live action, but have also, some of them have done hybrid and worked with our AI team. Some of them prompt, some of them work just as if it's like a visual effects project where they will just oversee our AI team just generating the images, and they will just say, yeah, that works or it doesn't. Our AI directors, some come from a filmmaking background, but a lot of them are just, they come from all sorts of different backgrounds. One of them is like a stand-up comic. And I guess what I would say as far as the process goes, I would say traditional filmmakers come more from a process of understanding storytelling through video, and understand pacing and framing and lighting and all of that sort of stuff, and obviously performance. AI directors are, some of them come from a filmmaking background, so I think the better ones have that background and they can do it. Other ones are just able, it just depends what you're looking for, and there's different things. I think the process that I've seen, though, is still the same with working with creatives. You're still going to collaborate, you're still going to have rounds of review. But again, I think it's more the storytelling aspect. That's where the best AI directors coming out right now have that. They're not just great visualists. If you're just creating visual montage, we've seen it, been there, nobody cares anymore. Can you deliver a brand story or a short story and deliver great visuals? That's the best people.
Yeah, and I would echo to that. So much of the prompting to these tools require a super technical visual background, right? I think the directors or even any creative person who can direct the visual look from the tool is going to get the best results. So I think directors who have, great DP backgrounds and really understand lighting and know how to talk to it can probably get a better result. I will say though, you have to learn how to, sort of how I'm framing it is like speak robot a little. You have to be able to talk to the bot to get the result that you want. And it's not just like talking to a person. I think ChatGPT does that really well where you can talk to it directly, but like Midjourney, you need to know how to like speak like a robot to get the output you want. So I think if directors have that like technical and interest and want to get into it, like they will get the better result out of it. And again, but it's also what all of us are also doing. So we're all exploring it in the same way. But not, as a director, I don't have necessarily all like the lensing and the framing. I can imagine it, but I would love to work with someone who has that to be able to pull it out of the machine.
Well, and Anastasia too, I was realizing that, with all the prompting and things I'm doing and creating, there still needs to be a great creative idea behind that, because what I'm outputting might not be the best, because I'm just thinking of it as like testing it out. So you're still going to need the creative thinking behind it, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think AI is going to replace like content is still king. The idea is still going to reign supreme. If you can pull it out of chat and then you can get it to look right, then that's going to make waves. But otherwise, it can fall really flat.
Well, as we wrap up, I want to thank our incredible panelists for their insights, Lisa for producing and helping me create this space, and all of you for joining. What we heard today makes one thing absolutely clear. The future of AI in our industry isn't going to be just decided by technology, but by all of us. Everyone who registered will receive the recording through my newsletter, the Double Helix on Substack. So I hope you'll revisit the conversation and keep it going. This is hopefully just the beginning of where the future of AI will be negotiated. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.